Welcome to the Mystery Symptom Summit, solving the root cause of your chronic illness. We are honored to have you join us. We have a few important items to share with you before we begin. First, all of our speakers have generously offered free gifts for you. Be sure to click on the link on the speaker page for their specific gift, and also visit pinkfortitude.com/Mystery Symptoms Summit resources for all of our speakers' gifts, books, and even more resources you will want to check out. If you would like lifetime access to all of these interviews, plus additional bonuses, be sure to upgrade to our VIP membership package. The information provided on the Mystery Symptom Summit has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. The information is not meant to be used, nor should it be used to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any medical condition or disease. This summit is not intended as a substitute for the medical advice of a physician. The viewer should regularly consult a qualified, licensed doctor in matters relating to his or her health, and particularly with respect to any symptoms that may require diagnosis or medical attention. Neither Pink Fortitude LLC nor any of our speakers on the Mystery Symptom Summit are responsible for any specific health needs that may require medical supervision and are not liable for any damages or negative consequences from any treatment, action, application, or preparation to any person listening to or following the information on this summit. References are provided for informational purposes only and do not constitute endorsement of any websites or other sources. It is with great pleasure that I want to introduce our next speaker on the Mystery Symptom Summit. Let's welcome Dr. Jason Piken. Dr. Jason Piken is a chiropractor, certified nutrition specialist, and health coach who offers a unique, holistic, and whole-body approach to nutrition and wellness. Since starting his practice in 1996, Dr. Piken has taught people how to heal from various problems, ranging from chronic pain to digestive disorders. When you walk into his office, you know that you are in an environment where you're going to be personally cared for. His Midtown Manhattan office, Innate Wellness Group, functions as a primary source for healthcare without the use of drugs or surgery. We will be discussing, is the gut-brain axis why you're not better yet? In this interview, you will learn, what is the gut-brain axis? What is your approach to getting people better? How do the foods people choose impact their chronic symptoms? How do you figure out what to eat? What is the microbiome, and how do we care for our microbiome? Dr. Jason Piken, welcome to the Mystery Symptom Summit. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Holly.
Yeah, I'm excited. And I learned about the gut-brain relationship back in 2015, and it was basically the integral part of my healing. And I'm so excited to have you here today to share with us your knowledge and expertise on the gut-brain axis.
I hope everybody in the world gets to learn about it, because to me, it's the essential part of healing.
Yes.
It's more important than our gut and our nervous system.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So before we get started, why don't you share kind of your background, your story, how you got to this place?
Yeah, to make a long story short, 8 months before I graduated chiropractic college, I was in a pretty horrendous car accident. I was ejected from a car. I lost a few seconds. So I just found myself on the pavement, on my hands and knees. I looked to my left and I saw my watch. I looked to my right and I saw like the grassy median and the divider. And I looked up and there was a car coming at me. So I just quickly assessed that I was in the left lane of a major highway. I jumped over the median, and finally saw the car that I had just come out of about 100 yards away. And that's when my friend Brett jumped out of the driver's seat, looking at me, and his jaw dropped, literally like that, jaw dropped. And until then, I had no pain. I didn't feel a thing. But then the pain hit. I dropped to the floor and I did not get up, and I wasn't getting up. And that turned me into a patient. And instead of becoming a chiropractor right away, going out and healing people, I developed, some pain. Well, there was initial pain, but I developed some chronic pain that nobody was really fixing. And as I was living with this pain, it started to turn into other things. I developed digestive issues. I developed like abnormal reactions to stress. I was becoming anxious, and I never was an anxious person. And finally, I found something called applied kinesiology. And when I learned that technique, it tied everything together. And the core of it really is understanding that the nervous system controls everything, and understanding that the foods you eat and the environment that you're in all plays a part in your health. And what it came down to is leading me down the road of research and making sure that when you heal the gut and you heal the nervous system, everything else falls into place.
Wow, that is, I can't even imagine just the trauma from that. And, just you're such a blessing to be able to, not just come out of this on the other side in good health, but then, kind of take that trajectory, and especially on the path that you were already on, and to be able to heal people in the process. So yeah,
It was my driving factor, not only to get myself better, but I knew if I could, then I could fix other people that had chronic conditions. And that's what I wound up being as a major part of my practice, chronic problems.
And, and I think especially too, as a doctor, having that empathy factor, when you're working with your patients. So that's pretty great to have.
Yeah. And the experience, what I didn't realize, what they don't teach you in school, is the experience of going to a doctor. As a health practitioner, a lot of health practitioners are like buddies with their friends, and that's who's treating them, and they're treated differently. But when you become a real patient and you're in the system, you see how disconnected it really all is. And all I was looking for was somebody to be that primary person, even if they couldn't fix everything, that primary person to direct me without drugs and without surgeries, just that looked at me as a whole person and guided me. And I couldn't find it. So that's what I became. And that's what I try to teach people.
Oh, that is absolutely an amazing story. So thank you for sharing. So
Yeah.
let's dive right in it. I mean, what is the gut-brain axis? What does it do? How does it work?
So I've thought about how to try to make this as simple as a process as possible, because it's your nervous system. It's complicated, but I like thinking of just the first part of it, just food. When we eat something, the innate intelligence of our body is so incredible. It can take something as simple as what we think is an apple. It seems like one ingredient, but actually it's made up of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands. I'm guessing thousands of molecules that put it together. And not only does our body know how to break it down mechanically with our mouth and through the acid in our stomach and break it down into smaller parts, but it needs to sense every single little molecule of that apple. And it has to determine one of two things. Is it good or is it bad? Is it nurturing us, or does it need to go along? And it's these little projections called villi in our small intestine that tend to do that. They're like sensing the little broken down pieces that go by. And each time they are sensing it, they're feeling for it, they're actually sending messages back to our brain. So if we think of it, if that is a pure organic apple that is sweet and it tastes good and it's all nourishing, great, our brain gets these perfect messages. But let's say it's an apple laden with pesticides. Our brain actually understands that there's something that's not supposed to be there. And then there's all these other processes that have to go along with detoxification of the garbage that's not supposed to be there. And let's say it's not as wholesome as an apple and it's a Twinkie. Well, now we have these things that our body doesn't even understand, or red dye number 40 in an M&M, or whatever it is, or the Gatorade that a lot of people drink. When we put things in our body, in our gut, it has to signal the brain. And if it's signaling all positive, then the brain is really happy and healthy. If it's signaling the brain that there's stress, that there's something wrong, well, then it slowly damages the brain. And there's the reverse down. If we're stressed, then we can't digest our food properly. And this is how chronic conditions start to play with each other. So whether you have anxiety as your major or acid reflux as your major, and I know we can go down a path of naming a lot of symptoms, but whatever it is, whatever your symptoms are, if you're not looking to this axis called the gut-brain axis as a major source of mystery illness, well, I think you're missing something big.
And, you brought up an interesting point. You talked about, eating under stress and being able to digest. And is that why, people, like, you're supposed to pray before meals and you're not supposed to come to the table and be angry at dinner time? Is that kind of why?
Yes, there's, I don't know how much in detail we get into sympathetic, parasympathetic. Is that something you want me to delve into? Well, I'll make it more
Oh,
simple.
sure. Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, we can.
When you're busy, you can't digest. You can, of course, but you're basically subverting your digestion. You're impeding it.
And wait, time out. So when you say when you're busy, you can't digest, that
Yes.
also talks to eating on the go, eating in your car, eating at your desk while you're working, right?
It could be physically busy or just mentally busy.
Okay.
If your brain is active, well, then your digestive system doesn't work as well. There's a part of the nervous system that's for resting, digesting, and healing. And that is separate from the activity part of our nervous system. And again, that activity is either physical activity, like exercise, like eating on the run, really, literally, is not great for you. Even though you can do it, it's not great for you. And also eating while this is running is not great for you. So I'm guilty of it too. I eat at my desk sometimes because there are those days, but the vast majority of the time, I at least give myself 20 minutes. And I pick the type of foods depending on how much time I have. Like I love to eat a salad for lunch because I love getting a big raw bunch of vegetables filled with great things that are nourishing me for lunch. But if I only have 10 minutes, I'm not going to eat a salad because the energy that salad takes to digest is going to be ruined by the activity. So I'll have something very simple, or at times I will skip a meal because I think it's better for me to push on and leave my driving part of my nervous system going and let the digestion part have a rest for a little bit.
Okay. That's good to know. That's good to know.
Okay.
And then what is your, I guess, kind of approach or protocol? How do you work with people in order to heal?
It depends whether it's live or virtual. What I prefer to do is something called applied kinesiology, but it does need to be in person with me. And what I do is I don't want to say I don't allow people to tell me what's wrong, but I try not to learn what things are wrong because the body has an ability to communicate. People communicate with me silently through the way they carry themselves and their posture, through the way they put their hands on themselves in different parts of the body, through the way they talk, their energy levels. And so I'd like to get a sense of that initial body language first. And applied kinesiology is really about using muscle testing different muscles to find out how they're functioning. And there are reflexes that tell me what's going on with the body. But if I have a virtual patient, what I really want to do is hear people's story and not just what their symptom is. And this is where the mystery symptoms really come from, because we're all sent off to specialists that only listen to a piece of our story. And even if they are willing to hear our whole story, they're thinking with a microscopic mind. Not that they're not brilliant, but they're really thinking based upon their knowledge of how does this fit into their model. And yes, I do have a model, but my model is wide. And there aren't as many, except, in this realm that your summit is addressing, health practitioners that have that wide view of looking at the body from like a top down of everything that's going on. And I want to hear about past physical traumas, current physically, how you carry yourself all day and how you're exercising, past emotional traumas and what's your emotional status in your average day, and what are you putting in your body and what are you putting on your body. And when we get a big look, big overview, we systematically first start with just your simple habits, changing your habits. That's what I wrote my book about. The first place you need to start is healing your gut and your brain by doing simple things like you mentioned, prayer, meditation, exercise, putting good nourishing foods in your body. That fixes so many things I'm guessing the Mystery Symptom Summit is going to attract people that are frustrated because they have more complex things. And when it comes to those type of people, we still have to reinforce all the good habits, make sure they're doing them, and then do some complex chemistries. Whether it's analyzing their stool, their poop, that's my specialty, through different types of stool analysis, analyzing their microbiome. Sorry, I got tripped up on those words. Or looking at their labs, their bloods. But a lot of it does come down in the history. Something that wasn't addressed, something was missed.
And it's almost like when when you were talking, I kind of had the analogy of the specialists, the doctors that are the specialists. It's almost like the phrase, if you're a hammer, everything's a nail.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you take the approach of the architect, right? You look at the whole picture.
Yeah, I haven't used that word and I like it. It's, I hate to say that I'm a generalist and that, I think some of the best doctors are not having a specialty, but that's how I focus.
So let's talk a little bit more about food and its connection to chronic illness.
Okay. It really all comes down to one word, inflammation. I'm sure other speakers on this summit are going to be speaking about inflammation, but I had mentioned before, food is going to give you one of two signals. It's either going to nourish you or it's going to not. And if you only eat, or at least 95% eat foods that are nourishing you, well, then your overall inflammatory load, the signaling, is going to go down. When we constantly put things in our body that are irritating us in some way, shape, or form, we're basically upregulating our inflammatory system. We're starting to drive it to being sensitive to a lot of things. So when it comes to food, the first approach I believe everybody should take, even though I don't love the word diet, is an elimination reintroduction diet. And that can take on many forms, anything from the ketogenic diet to being vegan to paleo, AI paleo. There's tons of different ways to start. But wherever you start, if you choose a limited diet and feel good, well, then you learned a lot. Even if you're only removing one ingredient and you feel better, well, you learned something. Now you can check that off the list of something that, at least for a period of time, you should not have because it's causing an irritation to your gut or your brain, promoting inflammation and chronic symptoms. So after you've done that, restrictive period, if you just systematically start to increase your diet, widen the variety, which you should do. Everybody should have a wide range of foods that they eat. Find out what you're tolerating, what you're not. Well, then you can create a specialized individual diet for yourself. And if you're having trouble expanding from that narrow source, well, that's when you need the help of a health practitioner sometimes to find out what enzymes, what supplements, what other testing can we find, what other genetic SNPs are there blocking you from expanding, because that's always the goal. Freedom.
Now, and you think of things like obviously sugar, processed food should, just be completely eliminated and, never brought back or brought back at an absolute minimum. But what are some of the foods that you should really, like what we would, I guess, consider healthier foods? What do you suggest eliminating first?
Depends on the person. One of the most common healthy foods that I see irritating people that people aren't exposed to as much is fiber. Is just literally high fiber raw vegetables. I mentioned I love to have a salad every day, but I have patients, at least at first, that cannot tolerate salads.
Is that just a digestion that they can't digest it?
It's really because of the fiber. Humans cannot digest fiber.
Okay.
It's the job of the microbes that live in our gut to break down that fiber for us. And so there's one of two things that will cause that improper digestion of fiber. It's either that they don't have enough good friendly bugs. They have something called dysbiosis, where they have too many unfriendly pathogenic bugs, yeasts, and molds and funguses in them, and they don't have enough good friendly bacteria to break down the food. Or they have something like SIBO, which stands for small intestine bacterial overgrowth, where they have enough friendly bugs, but they're not in the large intestine where they belong. They've traveled into the small intestine. And so now they're eating these healthy foods like onions and garlic and salads and fresh greens and kale, raw kale, and they feel horrible bloated. And some of the reasons, there are lots of reasons, I never want to pinhole anything, but some of the reasons are this abnormal balance of the gut microflora, which triggers more anxiousness and hypersensitivity of the brain, which then it's a feedback loop. They go back and forth. And so once you get caught in that rabbit hole, you actually have to work from both ends. First, easing the restrictions of diet, I actually find helps people because we have to be mentally happy. The diets don't mean anything if you're not ready for it. And so part of it is getting mentally ready for making changes. And once a person is, then it's just being okay with eating their new version of healthy.
And oh, go ahead.
No, hopefully I didn't over-explain that. Sorry.
No. That was good. And I'm glad you actually brought that up because, I think a lot of people think, oh, it's, just because it's healthy, it's good for you. And it is, but it may not be good for you personally. Right. And that's kind of what you were trying to explain, that, everyone's unique and it just kind of depends on how and what your body reacts to.
That's exactly it. I just met a person yesterday that has read about 30 different books. She has Crohn's and she's read 30 different books on health, and she keeps following each one until she reads the next one. And some of these books conflict with each other. And some of them, I have to say, are sensationalized. Listen, when you write a book, you have to sell books. So sometimes the title and the content is a little bit controversial and it only fits a very small subset of people. But if a lot of people buy that and think that pertains to them, they could actually be hurting themselves in the long run. And I don't believe in moderation when you're trying to fix something. I believe in going all out and fixing it. But once something is better, you have to relax your restrictions and start acclimating to the resilience of being human.
And I'm really glad that you brought that up. I mean, last year I was going through a health crisis. I gained 20 pounds, looked like I was 5 months pregnant. And, I was basically eating, a whole foods diet. I mean, 0 sugar, 0 processed food. And it was just the healthy foods that just my body wasn't ready for yet. And, just experienced some pretty bad symptoms. So I'm glad you really put it into perspective that, just because you're eating healthy doesn't mean it's healthy for you. So.
Yes, that's the fault of the microbiome. Well, if we had perfect microbiome, the bugs that live in our gut, it would be a lot easier. But many of us, because we didn't get on this health kick, our whole life. We started it when we were symptomatic, last year or the year before, something like that. We have some reworking to do. And it sometimes takes time to rebuild the microbiome.
So let's get into that. Can you explain to us a little bit more about the microbiome, what it is, and then also maybe touch on leaky gut as well?
Sure. So where to start? The microbiome. Basically, the term microbiome stands for all the microorganisms that live in and on our body. We have about, the numbers keep changing no matter what paper I read, but let's say we have about 60 trillion cells that make up the human body. I've read 30, 40 trillion, but somewhere in that range. There are 100 trillion microorganisms that live in and on our body. They outnumber us. They far outnumber us. But
like foreign invaders.
Yeah. But they are symbiotic with us. They belong in our body. We've evolved with them. Some people say that our mitochondria, which generate energy for us, are actually, they started off as microorganisms that got incorporated into the cellular structure. So we are partly a bug in some way. So let's say you're supposed to have, I like using my hands, I hope that's okay if everybody can see it.
Yeah.
Let's say you're supposed to have 90% good, friendly microorganisms that help us to eat our fiber, and they help us to create nutrients like vitamin K, the digestive foods, they're part of our immune system. 80% of our immune system are these microorganisms. If we have 80-20, we're okay. But if those ratios start to change, either from gut infections or chronic illness, horrible accidents, taking antibiotics, if those ratios start to shift and change, well, then we wind up with an improperly functioning gut immune system. And that can, on its own, can cause intolerance to certain foods, and it can cause leaky gut, and that can cause inflammation. And what leaky gut is in and of itself is whatever has irritated the gut. Let's say it's that microbial balance that's changed. The gut really is not inside your body. It's a tube. It goes from your mouth out the other end. And it's this tube that allows things in by opening and closing. And again, I hope everybody can see my finger movements out there. But the gate that allows good nourishing foods to come in and keeps out the toxins can get broken down. It's not like there's going to be a permanent hole, but what happens is the gateway can be slow and sluggish. The gateway could be stimulated by medications and toxins, so it can open when it's not supposed to open. And that is where we get the term leaky gut. We're allowing things into our body that the body should be blocking. And when those things start circulating around our bloodstream, our immune system, rightfully so, attacks. Yet if that's happening on a very common basis, that, again, that inflammatory process that I said at the beginning is upregulated because our body is always fighting. And then what that means is the little tiny bump on your elbow that should have been nothing now lasts weeks instead of days. The headache that used to come and go when you were young, you used to have a headache and it would just go away. You just wait out, you drink some water. Now it's lasting because the fire is never just a tiny little spark. It's always a big, gigantic fire. And so what we have to do is figure out how to calm the whole thing down, and it is individual. There are some great tips that everybody can follow, and I'm sure every practitioner is mentioning there, finding out the right nourishing foods, meditating, sleeping, being mindful, all these things, all these tricks, and then the right practitioner could get you the rest of the way.
Okay. And then what are your thoughts kind of on the same topic of, gluten or the leaky gut and the foods and insensitivities? What are your thoughts on gluten?
I like to think about that for a second because I have a few videos on this. Genetically, well, first, just learning about the gut, I've been told by every single person on the earth that gluten is evil and I should be off of it. And I went off of gluten the first time years ago for 10 days. Didn't notice a difference. I learned that wasn't long enough. You can't really tell. So I went 2 weeks. Not long enough. I went 30 days. Not long enough. I went 90 days. Not long enough, I was told, because I have the genes for celiac. So genetically, I'm predisposed to have celiac. That doesn't mean I have it. It means I'm more likely. So because I had a skin issue, psoriasis, I have an autoimmune issue that is non-existent now because it's gone. But I was trying everything I could to see what was going to fix it. I went a year and 6 weeks, okay? Completely 100% strict. There was one slip up with imitation crab meat at an airport because I didn't know gluten was a binder because it wasn't on the label. And I found that out after. That was my one slip up in a year and 6 months. What I learned was I didn't feel any better being gluten-free. And part of that gluten-free year, I was also dairy-free. I went through an AI paleo program. I did a lot of things, but I was always gluten-free. I didn't feel any better. When I broke it, after that year and 6 weeks, I broke it with a big bowl of pasta and some bread dipping in there, and it was great. And I didn't feel bad. So my take on gluten is, even if you're genetically susceptible, it doesn't affect everybody. I was almost hoping for what I see in patients, though, because when I see chronic illness, the vast majority of the time. If we take away gluten, dairy, sugar, soy, eggs, the big players, people feel fantastic. And I didn't get that. And so my take on gluten is everybody has to try going gluten-free, but it's not a rule because I do eat it right now and I can't see in any way, shape, or form how it negatively affects me.
That's really good to know because, it is, we have heard gluten is the devil and, it is big in terms of inflammatory, but it's again, like you said, very individualized.
It is. And I implore people to give it enough time because sometimes, like I said, those 2 weeks, the 30 days, the 90 days, sometimes it isn't enough for your body to heal. But if you've given something 6 months, a year, it's either that you weren't strict enough or there was not just a gluten issue, there was a gluten and dairy and you only removed one. That could have been it. And that's why I did those other foods along with the being gluten-free. But I found that those foods didn't affect me. I know the foods that affect me and I barely ever eat them. And it's a mild sensitivity, not a real, any type of allergy.
So let's go back to the microbiome. How do we best care and nourish our microbiome?
Mainly prebiotics. People talk about probiotics. Probiotics are great.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's the difference between a probiotic and a prebiotic?
So the probiotic is the actual microorganism that somebody put in a pill or a powder that you can take or a drink or something like that. Probiotic is a supplement and probiotics are great, yet, there's so much info out there. You have to take the right probiotic for you. You can take a multi-probiotic with tons of different strains and maybe you'll get lucky. But if you take the right probiotic for you, it has an effect that's positive on your body only while you're taking it. Those probiotics don't set up shop. They don't colonize your large intestine or your small intestine, wherever they're supposed to be, mostly your large intestine, on their own. They do need prebiotics. What prebiotics are the food that these microorganisms eat. What do these microorganisms eat? Mostly the food that we can't digest, fiber. So if you're feeding your body the right types, the right blends of fiber, basically fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, whole grains, well, then great, except if those foods are irritating you. It's a kind of a catch-22, but once you gain resilience, what you should be able to have is prebiotic fibers. One of the ones I love trying out with people because it seems to be the most well-tolerated and not a lot of people know about it is partially hydrolyzed guar gum. I'm not saying...
Sorry, what is that again?
So it's partially hydrolyzed guar gum. Guar gum is a gum that's used in as a binder and emulsifier and a lot of different products out there. What this one company I know of has done is they've broken it into really easily digestible molecules. And it's colorless, odorless, tasteless, and except if you're really looking for that taste. You barely can tell it's there. And it tends to be very gentle on a lot of people. I can't say everybody, but it's the one that I use as a go-to to start with. And that feeds the good friendly bugs. So do a lot of other things like acacia fibers and, just, again, the fruits and vegetables. Kale feeds those good bugs, but you got to watch how you introduce it. And if you're not used to eating a lot of fiber, you should do it very slowly. Very, very slowly to your tolerance. If your body says no, that doesn't feel good, listen to it. Back off. You can take weeks or months or years rebuilding your gut. It doesn't matter. We're going to be on this earth for a long period of time. When we try to rush it, we can feel bad and say, no, that didn't work. Move on to
I was going to say, especially if we're reintroducing food as well, to keep it gradual too, right?
Yes. I tell people one food a week. That's it. One food group a week. And if you're not sure how you felt, don't introduce anything else until you understand. It's really, it just takes coaching. People can do this on their own, but when you have some type of coaching, some type of person to refer back to, it just makes it easier.
So I wanted to make sure you've given us so much great information, and I want to make sure that, we've covered everything that you want to cover. I mean, I know you could probably talk for hours on this topic. Is there anything else that you want to add that we may have missed?
Well, just because it is the chronic symptoms, I know my focus was this gut brain. We talked about food, microorganisms. I want people to remember there's a physical aspect to healing. Everything is in applied kinesiology and how I practice: physical stress, chemical stress, emotional stress. And we talked about that chemical, the foods and the microbiome, and the emotional a little bit. We didn't touch upon the physical, and I'm a big fan of finding the right chiropractor or acupuncturist, anybody that can put their hands on you and remove that physical block. Because literally, I'm going to just demo, if your neck is like this and your shoulders are forward, you're blocking yourself from healing. And people don't give enough credit to the posture as being part of their healing process. I mean, I just feel better doing this right now because I realized I've been back like this in my chair for a while. And if you're sitting all day, which a lot of us do, just enabling your body to be open literally opens up your nervous system, releases endorphins, and makes you feel better. And that's what we all want. So that was the point that I didn't want to miss.
And I'm sure in terms of, in addition to the physical touch, also, when you talk about opening, something like yoga and stretching and that
Absolutely.
as well.
Exercise is not an option. It's vital. It's all dependent on which one are you going to do, and is it addressing all of your needs. I'm a big fan of yoga once or twice a week for years, but I know it doesn't address all of my body. So I mix in running, I mix in weights, whatever.
So, and I wanted to ask you kind of one more question before we wrap up, a little more of a personal one.
Sure.
What is your one thing that you do every day for self-care, or what is your kind of your go-to or your non-negotiable that you do every single day for health and wellness?
My go-to that I do every single day has to be meditation, because there are days where I feel like I don't exercise. I always move, but I don't remember not meditating. Even on my worst day, 10 seconds. That's my worst day. It's usually 20 minutes. But my one day the alarm didn't go off. I had to rush out. I literally still stood. I usually sit. I stood where I usually sit. I looked out the window I usually look at. I closed my eyes. I took a few deep breaths, and I made sure I kept my habit. I didn't break it. I kept it because I knew that even that glimpse recentered me.
Wow. That's good. That's good. I meditate every day too. So I think
Right.
should be a part of everyone's practice, but I think we're both kind of biased. So,
We'll all get there one day.
right. So, and I want to make sure, first of all, you have a book that you can find on Amazon. It's called Better 11 Simple Habits to Improve Your Life, right?
Yes.
And, go ahead.
It just basically talks about the base foundation of how to implement all these things like meditation into your life. And it gives you a tool of how to gradually introduce these good habits one at a time.
And we'll have a link to that on our resources page, so everyone can find that and make sure. And then also I want to make sure everyone visits your website and learns more about you. And that is
drjasonpiken.com. It's DrJasonPiken.com.
Awesome. And you have a free gift as well, right?
Yes. I'm going to be giving away the acid reflux solution. It mainly focuses on the upper digestive system and how it connects to the brain, but it's a foundation program that has a lot of tools that people can take with them and use no matter what their GI problem is or what their brain problem is.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. And we'll have a link to that on our speaker page and also a link on our resources page as well. So I want to make sure everyone goes, purchases your book, goes to your website, drjasonpiken.com. So, but
Okay.
yes, awesome. So Dr. Piken, thank you so much for being on the Mystery Symptom Summit, for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge and just really helping us break down the gut-brain axis and learning all about the microbiome.
Yeah, no, I thank you for having it because I couldn't put together something like this. So I applaud you for actually being able to organize all these great speakers in one place so that people can get so much out of. So
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for joining the Mystery Symptoms Summit. And before you go, be sure to click on the link on the speaker page for their specific gift. And also visit pinkfortitude.com/mystery symptom summit resources for all of our speaker gifts, books, and even more resources you will want to check out. If you would like lifetime access to all of these interviews, plus additional bonuses, be sure to upgrade to our VIP membership package. The information provided on the Mystery Symptoms Summit has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. The information is not meant to be used, nor should it be used to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any medical condition or disease. The summit is not intended as a substitute for the medical advice of a physician. The viewer should regularly consult a qualified licensed doctor in matters relating to his or her health, and particularly with respect to any symptoms that may require diagnosis or medical attention. Neither Pink Fortitude LLC nor any of our speakers on the Mystery Symptoms Summit are responsible for any specific health needs that may require medical supervision and are not liable for any damages or negative consequences from any treatment, action, application, or preparation to any person listening to or following the information on the summit. References are provided for informational purposes only and do not constitute the endorsement of any website or other resources.